Welcome, bent riders around the world. My name is Gary Solomon, and you're watching the Laidback Bike Report. How you doing, everybody? I'm coming to you live from the Laidback Bike Studios in Pickerington, Ohio, where we produce this monthly webcast, which can be watched live, like you're doing right now, hopefully, or later on YouTube. If you want to support this broadcast, there's a couple things you can do. If you look at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little red subscribe button. If you click on that and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that will really help us out. We are really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We've got 700 and some right now. So please help us out there and click on the subscribe button. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little lowercase I in white, and that'll get you some more information. You can find a place to chip in $1 or $2 to help us out. It will also have a link to our website, where you can learn a lot more about what the Laidback Bike Report does. You'll see all our previous shows available to you there. And new this month, you can buy a Laidback Bike Report hat, which we're going to talk about a little later. And you'll even see Brian Ball a little bit later, modeling that for us. He was nice enough to put that on. Didn't even know I was going to say that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We would really like you to be a part of this live webcast by joining us in our live chat. YouTube provides a window for you to chat with any of our panelists and ask questions that we can pass along to our guests. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right, usually to the right of the viewing screen. I think if you're on mobile, maybe it's a little bit down below. And I've also posted the link on Bent Rider and Facebook. You can just click that link. It says live chat, and you'll pop up a little box, and you can chat with us there. So introduce yourself, chat with any of our panelists, and ask your questions. We'd love to have you be an integral part of what we do here on the Laidback Bike Report. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what this webcast today is going to be composed of. We're going to break it down into 4 sections. We're going to have an interview with our special guest. We're going to have a report from Denny at the Laidback Sports Desk, as we do every month. We'll have an open question and answer period so we can catch up on all the chat questions we might see. And then we'll catch up on some Google Plus recumbent bike rider community business and contests and all that kind of stuff. So we hope you'll stick with us for the full hour or hour and a half, depending on how it goes here today. At this point, I'd like to introduce to you our panelists, our resident panelists. Start with the moderator of the Bent Society of Southern Florida. It's actually the community that he has on Google+. Carl helps to produce this webcast and handles our live comments. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Kidd is with us today. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Gary. Welcome to the Laidback Bike Report from South Florida. Come on down. The weather's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's always fine down there, right? Let's move along to someone who directs the program pretty much every month. He is our panelist from Salzgitter, Germany. We're always happy to have on Lars Kamm. Hi, Lars.
Hi, Gary. Hi, folks.
Lars wasn't able to be with us last month, so we're glad to have him back. Next, from Sayre, Pennsylvania, our famed Laidback Sports Desk anchor, Denny Voorhees is with us today. Hi, Denny.
Yay! Okay, yeah. Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody again this month.
Well, I think you even heard a little bit of cheering from the crowd on that one.
There was a huge crowd.
I've never heard that before. So, Denny, that's
just doing a live show. It's always great.
Yeah, it shows how popular you must be. All right, and speaking of popular, no one is more popular in the bent circles. Then our next panelist, the most recognized face in the recumbent community, esteemed co-editor of Bent Rider, Larry Varney, is with us.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody else. And I'm glad to be back again. And hopefully next time I'll have a lower third. But regardless, it's fun to be back again.
All right, a little technical talk there. That's his name and information down below here. That's the rest of us have. We're having a little technical difficulty with that, but we're glad to have Larry anyways. And we have a special panelist, a special guest panelist with us today. He is the owner of Bent Rider, the most popular recumbent site on the web, a great friend and supporter of this webcast. He's just back from his latest Pokemon Go excursion. We're happy to welcome Brian Ball. Hey, Brian.
Hello. No, my son's actually out playing Pokemon Go right now.
Okay, I wasn't too far off then, I guess.
No.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, Brian. It's great to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
Okay, we have a very special guest to talk to today, an interview. He's, I guess to set this up, I want to talk to you all a little bit about what our decision was in having this guest on. We've spent a great deal of time on this show talking about ultra-distance racing. We've had talked about Ram and Sebring, and we've had Kurt Servogel and followed him in the hammer run that he had for most record miles in a year. We've talked to the Parkers, Jim and Marie Parker, about their many long-distance exploits. We've had John and Jackie Schlitter and their Ram exploits. Long-distance racing is in their blood as well. So I think the long-distance aspect of these interviews is a reflection of the undeniable comfort and performance that you get from riding a recumbent bike. Today I want to begin a series of shows that talk about pure human-powered speed biking. How fast can a man or woman travel under their own power, and what sort of machine will provide the best results? Our guest today has built his own bikes and raced them at the mecca of HPV racing known as Battle Mountain. He continues to create recumbent bikes at his rural Ohio home, and he has a passion for helping bent riders every day achieve their personal goals. Bent riders, I would like you all to meet Thom Ollinger. Thom?
All right. Hey, thanks, Gary. Thanks for using the Pokemon joke on Brian and not me. And well, friends out there and members of my group.
Right. We're glad that you're joining us, and welcome all the members of your group. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first I wanted to see if we can chat with you a little bit about your background, Thom. Can you tell us where you grew up and lived in your early ages?
Yeah, sure. Well, we moved around a little bit as a kid, but I did most of my growing up in Wajack, Michigan, in southwestern Michigan. I was a runner up until I was 20 years old, but my older brother, that a lot of people know in the sport, was an exceptional cyclist at a young age, and as 20, I switched over to racing bicycles with him, same as him. And then years later, after having some knee surgery from racing and crashing a lot, they told me I'd never race again, so I decided to start riding recumbents. Little would I realize that people actually raced recumbents, and then that was, to me, the first hobby where I could design and build my own bicycles, and then race them also.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask about what your introduction to bents were, and so I guess your introduction was when you had to go to bents because of multiple crashes. What were there some severe injuries? What was that about?
Well, no, I had the knee involved, and the knee surgeon said, "Well, you'll never race a bicycle again." And I said, "Well, if I'm not concerned with going fast and competing with other people on the same type of bicycle, at least I could be comfortable." I never cared for the skinny bike seats, switching from being a distance runner to a bike racer. I never got used to the conventional bike seats, so I said, well, you know, if I'm going to ride, I'm going to ride in comfort. I never expected to be fast again. That was in 1990, and in 1991, even though I was incredibly slow, I've raced since then. A lot of people don't remember me because I was so far back in the group. But yeah, my first race was the Michigan Waterford race in 1991, and started building and racing my own bike.
All right. Well, okay, let's talk a little bit about the building aspect of this, because that's a big part of what you do. How did you start out building bikes?
We have to remember in 1990 there were like 2 bikes available commercially, maybe 3. You had a T38 Lightning, you had the 40, and then maybe you had something like a Rhine or something like that. And you know, people were racing those bikes, but those were way too slow for me to ever stand a chance of doing well. So I had to design and build what I hoped would be a faster bike, just so I could keep up.
Okay. So I guess we're going to talk a little bit about your shop, show some pictures and that kind of thing. But let's go on a little fantasy journey here. If you had unlimited resources at your disposal, tell me what your dream shop would look like to build these bents that you're building.
Well, after about 30 years of collecting shop equipment, I'm pretty close to having my my dream shop now. I've virtually every piece of equipment I could want, to do any type of metal work that I want or composite work that I want. I mean, there's always more equipment. You know, you've got the M+1 rule on tools as well as bicycles. But my shop is very complete at this point. And yeah, I'm pretty well set. You saw it, and there's a lot of stuff crammed in there that allows me to just make anything I could possibly want to make.
All right. Well, what is it that if you could make anything you want to make, I guess what group of things is it that you like to make the most? I know you work on more than just recumbent bikes as well, but what do you enjoy building the most?
Well, I don't know. I move around so much, you know, so many different things interest me, or somebody will want me involved in one project or another. You know, even now I'm involved in a couple of different bicycles. You know, a couple years ago we designed and built a bike for Cruise Bike, and that was a great project. I mean, we built something that nobody's seen before, and we think that we did a nice job on that. And then, you know, and then a couple months later, somebody asked me to work on a race car or a custom car of some type, and I'll jump to that. And then I'll have nothing to do, and I'll work on my own projects or my own bikes. And I don't know. I guess it's almost a curse being able to just work on anything. You know, I think I showed you a picture. You know, I made a custom lamp for somebody a couple months ago, and I just like working metal. I like building stuff that nobody's built before, and so I mean, really, that's what I find exciting. I really don't want to build something that somebody else has already done. So. Okay,
that kind of leads into, I guess, my next question. I was going to ask you about where these design inspirations come from. So, you know, I guess I was kind of looking to have you tell me who you know that builds things that you get inspiration from. Maybe you can tell me that, but maybe it's just all these designs come from within. So where do the inspirations come from for you?
Funny, I started sketching things that I wanted to build when I was in 5th grade, and it took me a long time to get around to developing the skills to actually build the stuff I wanted to build. You know, probably the greatest influence that I've had growing up is my older brother, Charles. Charlie, my son's name is Charlie. My older brother's name is Charlie. Figure that one out. And Charlie and I have been involved in a lot of projects ever since we were kids. You know, we were cutting up and putting back together, you know, BMX bikes weren't invented yet. We were building Stingray bikes, and we still are. You know, 40 years, 45, 50 years later, Charlie and I are still designing bicycles and putting bicycles together. So when it comes to bicycles and just about anything else, my older brother is just had a huge impact on what I do. And of course, he's a great resource to me because he's a real engineer. I just weld stuff together and cut stuff apart, and he's truly a gifted engineer. So that's where a lot of it comes from, and we do a lot of it. We're involved in projects right now, some of that are at a very high level performance-wise, whether they have motors or whether they have pedals, and so really a lot of that just comes from working with my brother. You know, we've done so much original stuff a lot of it was in the mindset of trying to make something better than what you could buy or that somebody else has. And so a lot of it was just pure creativity. I certainly have a lot of stuff that nobody else has. So
I don't think we're all going to see that. I think as we start looking through your stuff, no doubt about that. Well, and you talked a little bit to me when we met a couple of weeks back about Charlie and how he had helped you so much with the streamliner that you have built. We're going to take a look at that too. Let's kind of wrap this part of the interview up. I guess. What can you tell us about your future goals as far as your recumbent fabrication? Where are you headed as far as what you can tell us right now?
Well, right now, since I'm not racing myself anymore so much, I'm just riding because I've kind of shifted gears. I'm not a young man, not like you fellas, and so I'm really looking towards the future, and I'm working on my primary goal right now is to develop my metalworking skills and develop my shop to where, that's kind of my retirement plan, to be able to work in the shop, build stuff I want to build, and we are actually doing some development work for a couple of different companies doing bicycle design stuff that, was kind of confidential, so I really can't tell you about it, but when you see it here in another year, I think you're going to realize where it came from, and so we are involved in designing some bikes and building some prototype stuff. And about the only other bike is just now, if you saw me on my phone right before we got on, I was actually talking with a custom street rod builder in New Jersey, and I think we're going to develop a recumbent bike for him to learn to ride a recumbent bike so that he can ride a recumbent style motorcycle, possibly for a land speed record. So just tons of projects with motors and no motors. It's all good to me.
Your projects pop up, I guess, in some of the major bent manufacturers. We'll keep our eyes open for that. All right, to finish this off then, you're not racing anymore pretty much yourself, you just said. So I'm wondering, since you know so many people in human-powered vehicle racing that you've met over the years, worked with, built for, who do you admire most in terms of the HPV racing world?
Well, since I started in '91, I've gotten to know a lot of people. Gardner Martin was a good friend of mine, and what a huge force early in the sport. And of course, I knew I just because of our involvement in Battle Mountain, I got to know people. Matt Weaver, who was a genius designer of HPV bicycles, but more relative to people that would be watching this show, you've got people that are friends of mine and have had a huge influence on mine that have done a great deal for the sport, and he gets mad every time I bring him up because I'm always trying to get him a statue built. But you've got people like Sean Costin, who was, besides being a stellar racer and the first American to win a lot of world championships, the recumbent races, the world championships, Sean has turned the sport around through his own efforts so many times with the starting of Battle Mountain, the creation of Battle Mountain. HPV racing was just a super obscure sport that few people around the world did or cared about until we started Battle Mountain. And then all of a sudden everybody got excited again. That was 16 years ago, and people are still excited about it. And if that wasn't enough, Sean decided to take on the hour record that existed since Francis started it, set the record in 1933 and got recumbent banned. The hour record had lasted for decades and decades, and Sean took it on himself to not only break the record but create the World Recumbent Racing Organization that really lit the world on fire when it came to the non-faired racing bicycles. So you've got Sean Costin, you've got great people that's done so much for the sport. The guys with the websites like Brian, of course, and I mean Brian's done a lot more for the sport. He sponsored me at Battle Mountain one year and drove out to Battle Mountain with me. You've got Warren Beauchamp that's done so much for the sport with his website. Gosh, right off the top of my head, that would be a big start of it. Another person that a lot of people know that's meant so much to me and been involved in so many things with for me is my son Charlie. You know, it's funny that I'm thanking somebody in the next generation, but you know, he was involved in so many things with me racing from a young age, and in his design and helping me do things and go places. You know, he's been a major impact on me and on the sport. So, you know, I've got so many people to thank, you know, because, I mean, I'm just a fabricator and a racer, and without these other people really opening doors and, you know, getting other things going, I certainly wouldn't be able to do all the things I've done.
Okay, that's great. That's great to hear. Panelists, let me just give you a little heads up here. I've muted you all so we can hear Thom clearly. So if you need to say something, make sure to go up to the menu at the top and unmute yourself. Brian, I was gonna, since your name was brought up there, I wanted to see if you, and we're gonna kind of go into the history of Battle Mountain here next with Thom. I thought maybe this would be a good time for you to chime in and talk about your relationship with Thom early on. And I know you had something to do with, obviously, you just mentioned something to do with the Battle Mountain runs that he had. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection to Thom on this issue?
Yeah, I think when I first met Thom, I was what, like 23, 24. I just retired from mountain bike racing and drove up to some of the Midwest races there with a challenge low racer or whatever I was on that week. I had a Zox for a bit, European like low racer stuff, and at the time I was a recently retired, you know, semi-professional mountain bike racer, so I was a fairly good motor, and Thom and I got along really well, and Charlie was his son was a wee little kid then. He was like 8 or 9, I think, when I first met you guys, and already stronger than I was. And you remember like wrestling when he was a little kid and stuff. But then like years later, we wound up driving out to Battle Mountain, and you know, Thom called and asked if I wanted to help drive the van, and I said sure. And I flew to his house in Cincinnati. We drove out there. Very boring drive, but it was fun because, you know, Charlie and Thom are fun to hang out with. But it was I remember it was like early days of the GPS, and we got on I-80 to head out to Battle Mountain in like Illinois, and it said in 1,287 miles take exit whatever, because you're just on I-80 the entire way there. And yeah, it was fun though. It was great hanging out, and I helped crew for Freddie. I abandoned Thom and helped crew for Freddie Markham once I got there because our name was on the side of the bike. But it was a great time. Then we drove all the way back, and it was really good. And Charlie was racing that year. Thom wasn't racing. Charlie was racing.
Yep. Okay, super. Okay, Thom, if we can go back to you, let's talk a little bit about Battle Mountain, and I know the early days. Tell us what you know about the beginnings, the origin story of Battle Mountain as you know it.
All right. Nobody knows it better than I do. So how it happened was, you know, I started, you know, racing recumbents, like I said, in 1991. And after following that knee surgery that held me back for many years, I did an early race, and a fellow that a lot of people remember from Michigan that raced a streamliner, older fellow. I thought he was older. He's probably younger than me now. John Stinson was doing a ride, and he had a really well-known streamliner that he built, and it just flew by me. I couldn't just believe that something human power could ride so much faster than me, and so I had to build one. I built one that was fast, but hard to ride, and I continued racing streamliners. We called it the Midwest Streamliner Series back then. Soon it became the HP Series, and of course, once again, Sean Clausen comes up. Me and him became, you know, really good friends racing in the series, and we were both racing non-faired bikes at the time, and every now and then we'd race a faired bike. And then in 1990. I had built a streamliner using a new technique that I bought from the aircraft industry, where I could build composite tub bicycle that didn't require a mold. And I built that bike in 1991 and won the North American Championship with it. Well, the same year, Sean Costin had won the World Championships in Europe with the sprint power. So, and you know, being good friends we were sitting down talking. I was also, when I first met Sam Whittingham, he was at that race that was up in Sparta, Wisconsin. Sean and I were talking. We said, hey, you know, I can build a pretty good streamliner, and And Sean was the strongest recumbent cyclist on the planet at the time, so we said, let's combine our talents. We'll build a streamliner and find a course to race it on, and we'll set the world record, and it will be really easy. And it was so easy that we've never done it yet. But as we got more and more involved in attempting a world record, we learned so much more about what it takes. Initially, I was going to design a bike, and I realized that I wasn't smart enough to build the best bike possible, so I involved my brother, who did aerodynamic work with his helicopter. So then we had a bike, and we had a rider, and we had a builder. We needed a place to race it, and setting world records is all about optimizing conditions, so we had to find a really, really fast, straight road where we could attempt this record. And that's when we got to know Matt Weaver, who, in wanting to set a world record, had surveyed the entire western United States relative to grades and altitude, and found several courses that seemed like a good place to set a world record. And we negotiated a deal with him whereby we would set up a race. He could run there if he would just tell us where this course was. And the course was 14 miles south of the town of Battle Mountain, Nevada, on Highway 305, which is conveniently 2,004 miles from my front door. And then that's how it went. As a team, we created Team Ollinger. We had other people involved that were critical. We had, the great Richard Myers involved in helping build the bike. We had Bill Murphy involved in building the bike, and of course my older brother, and then Charlie, as a youngster, was helping too. And that was that's what formed the team of Team Ollinger, and we created this event. Much of the 99% of the creation of the event was left to Sean Costin, who, it was almost like working a second job and spending all the money you made to create an event that's thousands of miles from your house. And then that in September of
was this the Obi-Wan that you're talking about that was created for this?
That was the Ollinger Special.
Okay, so that was the bike before. That's not the bike. I was going to make sure. That's not the one we're talking about. I'm not sure if we have do we have a picture of that? I don't think we do we, Tom?
The other one that was in the trailer.
Yeah.
With it, but
yeah.
I couldn't.
That was the first one. I don't think we ever got pictures out of that one. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to just show a picture if we had it. But go ahead with your story, because we'll get to the Obi-Wan.
Because we built this fantastic shape, and we took a design clue from Matt Weaver. The year before, we had heard about Matt Weaver, and it was almost like some mythical legend of this guy that could build these incredibly fast streamliners. And the rumor was that he had built a streamliner that didn't have any windows. And then at the time, we thought, well, that's not even possible. We knew that it was guided with a camera mounted on the top, but we thought, well, nobody could ride a bike simply by looking in a video screen. And but in fact, we did build a bike, and it didn't have a front window, and it did have a video screen, and it was very rideable. And at this time, I've actually ridden 3 of those bikes. So, and then that's what started Battle Mountain. We started the first event. We were sure we were going to set the world record, but we didn't want to do it in a vacuum. We wanted people like what the Cheetah team did years before. And so, of course, we'd invited Matt Weaver to compete with his bike, and we invited the existing world record holder, Sam Whittingham, and the designer builder, George Georgiev, to come down and compete with us. So that first year, there was just 3 bikes, and then that was the beginning of this epic event that continues to this day.
Okay, so let's go to today, because let's talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on the current crop of racing, the bikes and the people that are building and racing those bikes. I guess my big question would be, how is it different than it was 4 or 5 years ago when things were getting started? How is it different today than what it was when it was first getting started?
Well, the big difference is there's 2 big differences. There's the understanding of the design, and then there's the resources of the teams that are building them. Back when we started in the late 90s, early 2000s. You had guys that were designing these bikes, not like that one, but they were designing bikes with the mental image of what they thought great aerodynamics was. And you didn't have engineers, you didn't have aerodynamicists involved. You just had guys with a lot of experience. Guys like Georgiev, the guy's a genius. He's a sculptor. He's got an unbelievable eye for shapes. And everybody, they would design a shape that they thought. They didn't have computational fluid dynamics or wind tunnels or virtual wind tunnels or any of that business to test the design. They would simply shape a bike the best they could, try to put a good drivetrain in it, and they'd stick a really strong rider in there. And that really, produced some fast bicycles. But starting with Matt Weaver was the first person to have a really futuristic look at how air flows around a bicycle and how much faster any bicycle or any machine can go through the air if it has absolute control of the air that flows around it. That's what we call laminar flow. And that's the big difference between then and now. Even after Matt Weaver introduced the world to it, you didn't have the people that had the thought processes that were possible to take that ball and run with it, create a superior bicycle like what Matt Weaver did. You had people like my brother that certainly understood it. We designed bikes using those theories, but then we didn't have the resources to build a bike. And then several years ago, you started to see the university teams, like the Delft team out of Holland. They had the understanding of the aerodynamics and then the money, resources at the university to build this bikes. And that's when you started seeing bikes that consistently ran over 80 miles an hour. If you look at the top bikes, with the exception of the Georgiev Varna series bike, virtually every bike that's been over 75 miles an hour was designed with a computer and built with a team that had incredible resources. And of course, that was really driven home last year with the Arabella team out of Canada, with Todd Reichert's team, who had they'd been designing bikes for years and using advanced theories, and then when they got really serious about it, they actually went back and restudied what Matt Weaver had done 15 before and used his theories to create an even more advanced bike. And then they had the money and they had the team resources to build a bike that was a quantum leap over what we were doing in the early 2000s, where 70 miles an hour was amazing, unthought of. When the Cheetah team set the record of 68 miles an hour, they said that was the limit for human-powered achievement. Nobody would ever go faster. And now the Arabella team's gone almost 20 miles an hour faster. And unfortunately, it's a sad thing for garage builders like myself, because even if, I believe we could design a bike at that level, we just don't have the money and resources built like that. It's like guys in the garage one time could compete at the Indy 500, and now you don't have a remote chance of doing it without a $20 million budget.
That's kind of where I was going, yeah, because all the amazing things you did and all the amazing bikes that you built in the garage and started getting to where you wanted to go. And now it did occur to me from looking at the results that there are a lot of big university teams, money behind the building of these bikes, that are winning. So what about you're not going to race anymore? You're pretty much out of racing, you said, but you're still building. So you think pretty much the chances of anyone like you coming in and being competitive are not there at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I would be as capable as anybody with the building skills and experience and the design team behind me, and we just simply don't have the resources. I mean, I don't know that I'm entirely done yet. The bike that you keep showing the picture of, the OB1, was a variation of my brother's ultimate design. When I raced it in 2012, that was the year after I'd had my critical illness, and I built the bike in a matter of weeks. And when we went out there, it showed a lot of potential, but it didn't really show us how fast it could really go, because we feel that the bike could certainly be competitive at the highest level. And I'm not certain that I'm done playing with that bike, But to think that anybody in his garage is likely to build a bike that's going to beat the world record is really, really unlikely. And
so it's a matter of setting your goals. I mean, if your
people,
goal is,
they say,
go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what you're leading to. I mean, a lot of people, the sport at one time was something that somebody could build a machine and go, hey, I'm going to set the world record. And now that's simply not the case. And a lot of people goes, well, that hurts the sport, or that's bad, or I don't like that. But I'm sorry, that's just, that's progress, and that's where the sport's taken us. And I mean, we could all be struggling to try to beat each other with garage-built machines going 70 miles an hour, or we could see the sport go really, where human-powered achievement should be going, and that's faster and faster speeds. And it's just too bad that guys with low budgets working in the garages probably are not going to be a part of that.
That's progress, and I think it says something about the importance of what you started, because for that money and all those people to be involved in this, it's probably more than just setting the world record. I think from that Toronto team, I've seen some of the videos. They talk about how the designs, the science that they develop from building these bikes can be used to make everything more efficient in terms of cars, planes, that type of thing, and may be useful in other places. So maybe it's going in a good direction, even though we've kind of gone past the point where pioneers like yourself can just jump out there and try to set a record. So interesting to see. Let's move along here if we can. Any panelists, you have anything to shake your head yes or no here? If we don't have anything, I'm going to move along. Denny, you have something? Unmute yourself if you want.
Yeah, Tom, I was just going to ask you, one of the things, there's been several questions up here. Big question we've had in the background is, how big is that chain ring out back?
Well, you know what? Let's, Denny, we're going to hold off on that, because actually we've got a picture of Tom holding that ring, and we're going to talk about the whole story about that ring in a minute. It's a good question.
Yeah. Okay.
There are other questions here. You know what? Let's. I think we're going to go. Let's just go ahead and move along here, and then when we get to the question and answer periods, I want to go back and ask some of these questions. And it's a good point here, actually, folks. Again, let me reiterate, if you didn't hear me at the beginning of the show, we want you to be part of this broadcast. We want you to ask your questions and interact with our panelists. So again, jump on that live chat if you're watching YouTube, right to the right of the screen, or below if you're on mobile, you'll see a live chat. Ask a question. Say hello, whatever you'd like to do there, so we will get those to Tom and have him answer your questions there. And yeah, also if you are not on YouTube, if you're on a Bent Rider, watching a Bent Rider, or on our website, laidbackbikereport.com, you also see on Bent Rider a link to the live chat. You can click on that and pop up the little window, or on our website you actually see the live chat box right there. So hopefully any of those places will get you to where you can talk to us and we can interact. Okay, so let's move along now if we can. I want to get to Tom's shop and the bikes that he built. We've talked all about this, and I want to show you some of the things that he has to fabricate these bikes, and some of the bikes that he's made. I think you're going to enjoy this. So Carl, let's see. Lars, go ahead and show the slideshow here if you can. We'll get started with that big chain ring that we've had questions about already. There we go. There's Tom with the massive chain ring. Tom, we must know the story of the chain. This is the same chain ring that's right behind you there. Tell us the story of this thing.
All right. Yeah. You can hear me, right?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a chain ring that was manufactured in Helicopter City in Russia, near Moscow, back in the, let's see, when that was, probably mid-90s. There was a genius engineer living in Russia, and they, after the fall of communism, they weren't building helicopters like they were, and he was very excited about human-powered vehicles. There's a fellow by the name of Boris Nikoldev, and he built a very, very innovative streamlined bicycle using technology of the day, and it was a direct drive bicycle, front-wheel drive, and he needed 2 different sprockets to drive the thing for different record attempts. He had a smaller sprocket that was 108 teeth, and that was the same sprocket that Sean Costner, that would have been his hour attempt sprocket. And then this sprocket is 132 inches, and when we met Boris because he immigrated to America, had some really, really tough years, as a lot of immigrants do. He was a genius of an engineer with several engineering degrees, and because of the language barrier, he had a tough time getting a good job. And Sean Costin was a great help to him in getting his future straightened out. And Boris gave us some mementos from his time in working with the human-powered streamliners. And I ended up with the little tiny sprocket there that was actually hand cut out in the middle, and then the teeth were actually hobbed on an old gear hob because they didn't have CNC machines at the time. And then, so I ended up with that sprocket, and stuff that Boris gave us, and then Sean's got the other sprocket. So 130.
Did you say how many there were in that sprocket?
132 teeth, and you can't expect it to see it in a streamlined bike anytime soon because the bikes are so small that that sprocket would stick out of the top of the fairing.
Could be a problem. Let's go to the next picture if we could. There's a little bit better close-up. You can see what he's talking about there. That's a heck of a sprocket. All right, let's go to the next one, please. Thom, what the heck? This is in Thom's. We're going to go take a little tour through Thom's shop here now. What is this?
Yeah, that's our famous fabrication shop known as the Fortress of Manitude. Ladies are welcome, but not usually all that comfortable being in there. This is just a funny picture that Gary took. I'm building a scratch-built miniature tow truck, and that would be the top of the wrecker assembly and what I may end up using as one of my hood ornaments on the vehicle.
Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, we're gonna look at some welding machines, and welding is a big part of what you do. Can you let's go through these, Thom? Can you talk to us a little bit about the different kinds of welding that you can do and what you have there to use?
This is an exotic type of gas welding torch. If Rick Gritters is watching this, he's very familiar with this torch. It's what they used to use in aircraft shops to weld aircraft frames. It's basically an oxyacetylene torch, but because of the design of it, you can do much more precision work. And I think Gary just liked that picture with the lights off.
I love that picture of your face kind of in the shadow there. I'm gonna pop this back out for Halloween, I think, and use it. Let's see the next one.
What we have here, that's my MIG welder. That's the welder, metal inert gas welder. You pull the trigger and electricity and wire comes shooting out the end, and that's what I've used for the majority of my the bikes I've built since 1991, which I think I've probably built about 50 bicycles, and all of them were original designs, and my bikes have won races in every category in the Streamliner fared and not fared series. So that's a really good machine right there.
All right, let's go to the next one, please.
That's, of course, says right on the side, it's a TIG welder, tungsten inert gas welder. The torch provides the electricity and the inert gas, and your other hand feeds in the wire, and that's for doing probably most popular for welding aluminum. And you can weld chromoly, you can weld almost any material with that. That's another one of my welders. It's a pretty good machine.
All right, let's go again.
This is a combination metal forming machine that you can cut metal, you can bend it, or you can roll it. So really good for forming seats, and also for a lot of automotive fabrication work.
All right, next.
Oh, now this, it's kind of hard to look at it because you don't know what you're looking at. It looks like a captain's wheel on the left, but the rollers to the right, you feed tubing into it, and they go between those rollers, and you can make a big long arcing piece of tubing. A lot of people saw the bike that Warren Beauchamp built before he built his present carbon bike. It had a very beautifully curved piece of tubing going out to the pedals, and he used this exact type of machine to bend that piece of tubing.
And if I can just interject here, you mentioned Warren Beauchamp before as being one of the guys that you admire in the bent world. Warren, actually, if I can put a little plug in, will be with us next month. We're going to be talking to Warren about some of the things that he does in terms of human-powered vehicle racing and building himself. So, all right, let's go back to the pictures if we can. All right, what do you got there, Thom?
This is what a lot of people have heard of this machine. It's called an English wheel. Its true name is a planishing wheel or a planishing machine. A lot of people who enjoyed watching the shows with Jesse James building custom motorcycles will remember him using this tool to make fenders and gas tanks. And what you use this machine for is forming 3D curves in flat sheet metal. So other than I've built a couple of fenders for bicycles using this machine, and I've used it in building some of the custom bicycles. I did a bicycle that looked like a 1920 Harley-Davidson board track racer, and I used this to form the faux gas tank on it. So not a machine used for making bicycles, but for doing automotive and custom motorcycle fabrication. It's a terrific tool for forming metal.
All right, let's go again.
Let's see here. Oh, that's one of my bandsaws. Kind of hard to see with all the clutter around it, but just a vertical metal cutting saw for cutting tubing or flat metal or whatever you want to use there.
Okay, next.
This is a machine called a shrinker stretcher. Also used in forming sheet metal for gas tanks or fenders, not so much for bicycles, though I've used it on bicycle seats before. It would either, depending which jaws you put in it when you pump the pedal, it will either grab the metal and stretch it out, or it will grab the metal, come it together, and shrink it. And you can use this to form bowls and curves and different stuff like that.
All right, let's go to the next one.
This is called a roll shear. It's kind of an exotic metal shearing machine for working with sheet metal. That's an antique round oak stove in Bavaria, Michigan, parked right behind it there. That's pretty neat.
Okay, and next. All right, so that's it for the machines that we have. Now we're going to see what sort of creations that Thom makes with these machines. There's going to be a few bikes here that I'm going to have Thom talk about. If I can just tell my panelists for just a minute, those guys working on chat, I see that a lot of the questions are coming in. If you guys could just keep track of those, because I really am going to, as soon as we get done with the bikes here, I want to go to them and start asking some questions. And so try to, if you guys could work on that, kind of keep those in mind so we don't skip anybody. We're going to get all your questions answered here. All right, Thom, what in the world is this high racing machine here? What is that?
All right. Bikes I build for other people, I build, what they want, and a lot of times it looks like something else. But when I build a bike for myself, it's almost always an experiment with some goal. After racing the no-com race bike that I raced for a few years, and that thing is really a rough riding bike, I said, well, I'm going to try to build a bike that's very comfortable. I mean, you think of recumbent's comfortable, but how comfortable a recumbent can I build? So I built this high racer style bike. It's got a Thom Ollinger single tube frame, so it's got some more flexibility. Another thing I did with it is I designed it to where it doesn't have an intermediate idler or pulley underneath the seat. Because I'm tall, I could build a bike that the chain goes straight from the front to the back. It's kind of neat. It makes a really quiet bike. But this bike, comfort-wise, it has Kevlar spoke wheels, which are kind of a suspension wheel.
Carl, you can go to the next shot. I think we have a few shots of this as Tom's talking about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's got a round road bike carbon fork that rides better. It's got an air cushion seat. It's got elastomers in the back of the seat. And let me tell you what, this bike it's disappointingly slow compared to my my racing bike, but this bike it's just amazing. You can ride on chip seal or rough roads, and it's not quite like it has suspension, but boy, it really smooths stuff out. It's really a fun bike, fairly lightweight bike, and just a really nice bike to ride. I've ridden almost all my miles this year just on this bike, so not very fast compared to a race bike, but it sure is nice to ride.
And amazing that you just build it all yourself and then just can hop on and go with it. So, It occurs to me, just real quickly, just a note. So many of us that ride recumbent bikes go around. People are not used to seeing them, and I know you probably have all experienced this. They say, "Did you make that yourself?" And of course, we haven't. The vast majority of us haven't. But of course, when that happens to Thom, he can say, "Yeah, of course I built it myself. I make all my bikes." So interesting.
The great thing about that, you get that from a lot of kids. They go, "Where'd you get that? Did you make that?" And what an opportunity just to tell a kid, you know what, I made it. And if you just go to school and you learn how to draw and you learn how to make stuff, then you can make one too. Because anybody can learn the skills to build their own bicycle. People want to get all excited about how tough it is, but it's just a bicycle. It just has pedals and two wheels and handlebars. And if that's really what you want to do, you can learn how to do it.
That's a good point. All right, let's move along with the pictures. We've got another bike here that, let's talk, what is this here?
All right, this is a Velicraft NoCom, which I think a lot of people have probably heard of, and there's quite a few of them in the United States now. It's just a really tragic bike the way they were originally constructed. They had a lot of issues that made a lot of people disappointed in them, but if they ended up in the hands of somebody that had the skills to make the bike work and not break and work like it should, then you just had an unbelievable potential for going really, really fast. You could tell that the guy that used to race that was skinnier than the guy that's sitting on it now, but the bike is very, very aerodynamic. This bike has got a great history because it was originally Bill Hannon, the famous Hannon the Cannon, owned this bike. It was a very early no-comp, and it just broke constantly. And I just kept fixing it for Bill constantly because I do carbon fiber repair on bikes. And the builder of Velicraft bicycles got so tired of it breaking, he simply built a brand new frame. And then this bike hung around for a long time, and after a number of years, he gave it to me and Charlie, and we couldn't fit Charlie on it, so I modified the frame to fit myself. I had to lengthen the frame. I had to modify the seat. I built my own fork. I built look at those handlebars.
That's a pretty close fit right there, Thom.
My knuckles actually crushed together, and we'll probably talk about some training and some speed later. But your body position on the bike is very, very important. How fast you're going to end up going.
As long as your knuckles are the only thing being crushed at that point, I think we'll all be relieved. All right, how about the next picture there? There's a little shot from the back, and I think that's it. Let's go on again.
Close
Carl,
my hand,
if you would.
sir.
Was that it for that, Thom? Did you have anything else to say? I didn't mean to rush it.
No, we can get into. I think we're going to talk about training and speed a little bit later.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, this is. I about dropped my jaw when I saw this in your shop. Of course, I'm a tandem kind of guy. I've never seen anything like this because there isn't anything like this. Is part of the reason. Tell us what this is, Thom.
Well, this is a bike I built. Oh gosh, I don't know. I must have built it in the mid 2000s. For Jeff and Jane Hun, they're really, really popular, really terrific people out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, that race, and I think they still continue to race in the series. And Jeff is a terrific rider. Me and him teamed up and did the race across Indiana one year, and terrific guy and terrific cyclist. And they like racing their tandem, and Jeff really likes going fast, and he wanted to go faster, and he asked me if I could design and build a tandem that would be, faster than the Rams Screamer that they raced, and so I worked up this design.
Next picture, Carl, because there's more. That's the couple, I assume, right?
Are racing it, absolutely right. And you see that they're both basically positioned like they're both riding low racers. And one unique feature of the bike that you've never seen before on a racing recumbent tandem was, on almost all racing recumbent tandems, they turn the rear rider around backwards. And that's very good for aerodynamics, but it's not really good for motion sickness or for the pleasure of the view. And that's Jane on the back, and she said, I want to ride on a tandem, but I don't want to face backwards. And so I had to
Next picture, Carl.
Tandem where, and so you can see it's got quite a drivetrain on it. But as the guys saw, when you're at my shop, it's got a very, very efficient drivetrain.
Next one, Carl. We'll go to the middle here, or maybe And the next one, please.
That's
You can see that middle drive. Go ahead.
Thom Ollinger bike. It's got disc brakes. It's got big mountain bike disc brakes on it. It's got a full complement of gears. All the shifting happens in the back. It's got a triple chainring on the front. I think it's got an 8-speed on the back, which wasn't that surprising at the time that we built it. It's all aircraft chromoly with aircraft 606 aluminum seats. And let me tell you what, boy, when you get rolling on this bike, this thing really rolls. It's really, really fun. Now you see it that I own it again because
I was just going to ask you to talk about that. So you have this. How did you end up with this bike again after you sold it?
You know, they owned it for a number of years and they raced it, and they pretty much set every track record at every event that they raced. It was real fast, but it just wasn't really what they wanted as a married couple, I don't think. So they decided they didn't want to race it anymore, and Jeff asked me if I wanted to buy it back, and I certainly did. And although he'd already sold some of the other parts to it to other people, so it took me a couple of years to put it back together, and I've changed some things on it, but they decided that they liked life at a little bit slower speed, and I still like life at a fast speed. So
all right, let's go to the next one, please, Carl. All right, so now let's talk about this. Is the OB1 that we talked about? Just tell us the story of the OB1.
All right, this is a really, of course, this is a really good design. Initially, we designed this bike in the mid-2000s, and the pure design in the CAD system that my brother drew, I would think would be as fast as anything in the world today. But we just didn't have the resources to build it. We tried to build it in 2006, but some of our, we had a firm that was going to CNC molds for us, and we had a firm that was going to CNC wheels for us, and it just became too much, and it turned out that we just couldn't get the bike done, and so we lost interest for a few years. But I really wanted to build the bike, and my brother, who'd put all these hundreds of hours into doing the design work on it, always wanted to see it built. And so when I was convalescing from my illness in 2011, I had some great ideas on how I could actually build the bike in my own shop, very close to the level that he designed it to perform. And so in 2012, hey, look at that.
And that was when you went over Niagara Falls in that bike. It's amazing how that held together, too. So that's some structural stiffness there.
Now, Brian Ball talked me into that. Yeah.
Sorry, I have no idea what that was. Go ahead.
But and so about less than 2 months before Battle Mountain in 2012, I was back to, surprisingly, a year after my illness, I was back to riding at a very good level. And just as a goal to my comeback of health and surviving death, I decided I would complete this bike and take it out to Battle Mountain and race it. So,
all right, Carl, do we have the other shots? Yeah, keep going. Go ahead, Tom.
And now, some of these shops, you start looking at it, you start realizing, well, how a bike can go so fast with just a human being pedaling it. You know, you have to think about how this thing cuts through the wind. It's all CAD design. And see if that next shot, that inside shot.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, that shows the bike actually
riding.
Okay.
Now my hand right there to the right, that's the stalk. It's a bike actually has 2 built-in roll cages. From all the roll cages, it's got rear suspension. And above my right hand is the stalk where the wires go through, where the camera mounts. Because of course this bike doesn't have any front windows. So it's got 2 cameras mounted right there above my hand that look down the track, and then a video screen mounts behind my handlebars so I can see where I'm going.
Carl, could you go back one and show that picture of him on the track, or so we can see that? So there's the camera up on top, right? Is that?
There's 2 cameras looking forward, and they're in a little wing.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you what, it sounds like the craziest thing you ever heard, but I never had a better view looking out of a streamliner than when I was looking in that TV screen, because we had a big high-definition TV screen in there. Not your 40-inch home unit, but when you have a streamliner and you have a canopy on it, the clear plastic is never very clear, and it's always at an angle, and your head is scrunched up in there, and you're trying to see. Whereas this thing, it had the cameras up high, and a video screen right in front of your face. It was really the best thing, except that the stress of building the thing and the stress of recovering from my illness, when we got to the track after driving day and night to get there, Mike Mowat, the great Mike Mowat, made that trip with me that year and helped me with it. When we got there, I was so exhausted, I had a mental and physical breakdown. I couldn't ride the bike. And the next day, when it came time to get in it, I was so afraid of riding this bike that I had to really sit down and have a good talking to with myself. And then once I got going, it was just terrific. The bike handled terrific, very easy to ride. And looking through the camera, even though it was the third camera bike I've ridden, the camera worked flawlessly, and it was really, really fun and easy to ride.
Okay, Carl, let's go on through the pictures again. By the way, Mike Mowat is with us, Tom. He's been chatting here. We're gonna get to those in just a couple more seconds.
I heard he was going to dominate the show. Now here's an interesting shot, and you're going to see a really good picture of this later. But you can see where I sit in the chair there, and you can see where my shoulder would be, and then you see the two chains going right over the top of my shoulder. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the bike had rear-wheel drive. But rather than putting the chain underneath the seat and having to make the bike bigger, I ran the chains over my shoulder. So
yeah, we've got a good shot of that. I don't know if that was towards the front, but don't let me forget that. I want to show that shot. Go ahead.
Okay. Now here, you can see the chain, part of the chassis and the seat. And, gosh, I don't know what I'm pointing at.
I think you're telling me to get a shot of the front of the bike. And so go to the next picture, Carl, and I think that's...
Go back.
Yeah, and even one more, I think. There, okay. That's probably what you're
looking down in it. You can see the front wheel. The front wheel and fork mounts on a frame that rides on suspension. It's kind of like a trailing arm on a three-wheel or four-wheel off-road vehicle, except it's pointing backwards. And then it has remote steering. And then way up in there, it's really a shame you can't see it because I made a set of custom crank arms for the bike, and the distance between the right pedal and the left pedal was 2 inches. It had a bottom bracket that was 1 inch wide. The crank arms were under ½ inch wide, and everything fit together perfectly. And it's too bad you can't see
Okay.
it's really neat.
Just a real quick one here. A question from Zachary Mormon has asked: is it fiber or Kevlar?
Okay, that's a terrific question, because this is a kind of a unique bike in the fact that it has a chassis that can be ridden without the body on it. And in this day and age, everybody's all hot and excited about using carbon fiber and Kevlar, but the body on this bike is 100% fiberglass and epoxy, because if you're not using the composite material as a structural material, there's just no reason for using it. It would be no lighter. It would be, strength is not required. So this bike actually has a fiberglass body over a chromoly chassis.
All right. Carl, any more pictures? I can't remember if this is the last one on this or not.
Couple.
Oh, now, okay, we're going to go back.
Back 3. I want to say something really quick.
Yeah,
here.
Sure. Go back one, please, Carl.
Now go back another, and then go back one more. This is really something I'm really proud of. The chain comes off the front crank set and then goes back over the top of the front wheel. This bicycle, you can turn it very sharply, and it never hits a chain, not like a low race or regular streamliner. It steers very easily. And then the chain goes into that that gearbox right there. You see an aluminum plate. There's a 9-speed gearbox in there with a derailleur. You can just see it hanging down. And then the gear ratio is jacked up, and then it goes back over my shoulder. So it's a really interesting bike because it had front and rear suspension. It had a transmission between my wrists. It had over-the-shoulder drive, a chromoly chassis, and the body floats on foam isolators so that the body doesn't shake from any vibration, so it cuts through the air better. Really interesting. And then right at the back of the gearbox, that's where the video screen would mount. Then the computer's above it, and then you can just barely see. Richard Myers wired me in a little dome light so I could read my computer as I was riding. So it's really, really neat outfit.
That's super. All right, you know what? Let's. I think it's time now that we get to the questions. We put them off long enough. Carl, if you could dig up that shot, I think it's up a little bit more towards the beginning, where he was racing, practicing on the bike, and the chains were going right by him. and we'll show that in a minute. But for right now, Denny, do you have a bunch of questions for? Are you ready to go with that? I can work this too. Before you start, Denny, first of all, don't forget to unmute yourself. We've got one from Donald Velasco saying, "Hello, it's 3:40 a.m. in Korea, and surprise, my favorite show is on. So thank you for getting up early in Korea, there, Donald. We appreciate you watching." Denny, what do you got?
Well, I've got a kind of an interesting question here, and it probably doesn't apply quite to streamliners, but Bob Brown III says, are there any aero improvements that can be done to a typical stick bike like the Bachetta? Do front and rear tail shocks really make a difference?
Well, that's a pretty darn terrific question, because going fast is all about how much power you can make and how aerodynamic you are, or how little drag you have. And even without adding any fairings to a stick bike, like, let's say, we'll just say it's a Bachetta, a super nice bike. Our friend John Schlitter, was involved in that. Obviously, you always want to run a rear disc. If you ever want to go fast on a recumbent, you always want to run a rear disc, and then you always want to run the most aerodynamic front wheel that your wind situation will allow. It rarely allows a full disc, but you can have a low spoke count wheel. You have a tri-spoke wheel. That's it. And then beyond that, the next thing you want to look at is your body position. The more you lay your seat back and still have it support you properly for hard pedaling, the faster you're going to go. And then the third thing is that a lot of people, a little bit much for them to deal with on a stock Bachetta, but if you're riding something like an M5, it's really easy, and that is modifying your handlebars so that your hands are not so far apart and your elbows bent out the windstream anymore. So you take someone like the great Kent Holt from Largo, Florida. He's got an M5. He's got the seat very flat on it. He's got what they call the gunner handlebars, which are, your hands are like this. And terrific combination for riding fast. Every time you make one of those changes, the bike is going to go faster without you pedaling any harder.
That's super. I've got one from your buddy Mike Mowat, who's chiming in here with some details of your run, saying Tom's best was 62.068 miles per hour in the Koslinger Special at Battle Mountain in 2003. At that time, it was the 71st fastest run ever. I was happy to be there for it. So that's a little bit of interesting news. Denny, you got any more?
Oh, let me add something to that real quick.
Go ahead, Tom.
That same bike, when Sean raced it in 2002, it was the third bike in the world, in world history, to ever go over 70 miles an hour under human power. So it was a very, very advanced bike when it came out. Didn't set the world record. It exceeded the world record that we wanted to beat. And but when I rode it, I modified it with a canopy, and of course I can't pedal as hard as Sean. Although unofficially, I did do a run at 67 miles an hour. And just for people to wonder, when I was going 60 miles an hour, I rode it one-handed just to see if I could do it, and it was very easy. So it goes like an arrow in flight.
Yeah, Mike also he also clarified, saying that Tom is still the 72nd fastest human being on the planet, though his fastest run moved down to the 401st best on the all-time fastest list. So that does not reduce our great thinking of how fast you are, really, Tom. In our estimation, you're still a pretty fast guy.
How fast I'm not.
So let's see, anything else here? Oh, so here's something also from Mike Mowat. Tom, tell us a little bit. Oh, he wants to ask about the International Recumbent Training Group. Mike, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Denny, you already told him that.
Yeah.
Jay Singer has got a question that's a big one that we've kind of talked about on the show before with the Parkers. Since they're all HPVs, why aren't bents allowed on the Tour de France and other sanctioned bike races? We don't want to get too far into this, but it has to do with a ruling from the 1930s. Tom, you know about that?
I've got even a better answer to that, and I'll make it quick.
I'm sure you do.
The Tour de France and conventional bike racing, but I've got this big training group, and I've got people in it that do ride recumbents. You know, I've got Race Across America veterans and guys who've raced in Europe. And bicycle racing is a sport, and it's a sport of similar machines. It's not a technical race to see who can have the most aerodynamic bike. We do that with our own HPV racing. So people that ride recumbent bikes, they say, well, my recumbent bike's faster, and they ought to be riding one of those. Well, they're forgetting it's a sport of conventional bicycle racing. And yeah, I mean, yeah, recumbents were banned years ago and all that, but that's really not even relative to the sport. To have an interesting sport, you have to have everybody on the same machine. You know, you can't have we can't have, you know, all these guys on conventional bikes and put Mike Mowat on a Recycled M1, and he slaughters anybody. Nobody's going to pay any money to watch that. It's not any fun. The sport of recumbent racing is proof of that. Nobody is too interested in watching that because it's just a bunch of guys out there riding on their own. But when you have a given format, even though it's an kind of an old-fashioned design, you have these men doing great battles on great teams, and there's teamwork involved, and there's heroic efforts involved, and none of it would be possible if they weren't riding similar machines.
Makes sense. Makes perfectly good sense. Lars, can you hit Carl's slide there? I want to show everybody this last picture. So there you go, Thom. There's you practicing on the OB1 without the shell, right?
Absolutely. And this darn photograph is just the photograph that launched 1,000 ships or 1,000 comments, because it's actually a screen save from a video of me pedaling the bike 80 miles an hour according to the rear wheel computer, and everybody goes, oh my God, you know, you can't ride something like that. It's going to saw his head off. It's going to saw his neck off. He's going to lose an ear. We're going to have to call him Van Gogh. But the way bicycles work, that chain just isn't going very fast. You can get going down the hill on a bike and look down at your chain. Your chain is not going very fast. It doesn't have teeth on it. It did have a guard on it when I raced it. This was when I first built the thing. So not as dangerous as it looks, but it's kind of an innovative idea. You get a really good look at the drivetrain on the bike there. The front chain goes back to the transmission in the middle. Then a second chain goes back to the rear wheel. You see some of the steering and suspension mechanism in it there. It's a really good picture, but not as frightening as it looks.
All right. A quick comment from Julian Motherall. I'm not sure I understand this because I just probably don't get the reference. OB1 reminds me of that sweet Cibo Mato sci-fi wasabi biking song from my ride playlist. So I'm sure that's a great song, and it means something to Julian. So there you go. Thanks for watching anyways, Julian.
Yeah.
All right. So let's, at this point, I want to make a quick comment about the last two bikes that we were looking at there. The tandem that Thom built and the OB1 that you just saw are going to be available for viewing at the Recumbent Cyclocon show in October in Cincinnati. So if you are planning on attending, one of the things you'll see at the Laidback Bike Report booth is Thom there with his bikes, and hopefully we're going to have another streamliner there as well. So Richard Myers is working on his, and hopefully we'll have that ready in time. So we should have some interesting bikes for you to actually lay eyes on and ask questions about. So we hope you'll join us there when that time comes. In the meantime, let's get back to the last section of the interview here about Thom's International Recumbent Training Group. Thom, what is the IRTG?
Well, the IRTG is a closed online Facebook group that I created. You know, I created it, I guess, probably about 2 years ago, and it came about because, you know, I'd spent all these years studying training methods and experimenting myself with training methods and bike setups, especially relative to recumbents, and I'd gotten more and more friends off the internet that we were having a lot of discussions on training techniques and bike setups, stuff like that. You know, some of the early people were my buddy Morten Tietz in Copenhagen, Mika Helander, Mike Mowat, David Studnick, and they were pretty much the original 4 or 5 guys. And the problem was, one of them would ask me something in a text or in a message, and then I would answer them in great detail, spend hours slaving away a punch at a time to type out this long letter. And then a couple of days later, the next guy would ask me the same question. And so I got together with guys and I said, hey, we really need to form some kind of group so that when I write something, everybody has access to it. And then, and we tried a couple of different formats. These darn computer types tried to get me to use some kind of Google thing and something else, and I just wasn't smart enough to do that. So we just ended up with a Facebook group and a closed group, and it's worked out really, really well.
That's great. And yeah, I see some of the questions that pop up on there, only half of which I even understand. But let me ask you about more generally, for people that aren't on the group. I know you have a lot to say about training, and you already talked a little bit about what you can do to get your bike to go faster. What about the average bent rider who's not necessarily going to be a racer? What does your advice hold for someone who's just the average rider riding? How can what you have to say help the average bent rider?
Well,
or maybe it's not for the average bent rider. Is it just for people who want to race?
Oh no, absolutely not. When we formed the group, a lot of it was, the purpose of it was just so that we'd have pure information. You know, you get on some of these forums of different groups and you ask a training question, and some guy that's never been in a race in his life, but he studied, he Googled for 45 minutes, is now an expert on racing bicycles and training. You know, he's going to post right up and say, well, you have to train Tabata. Tabata's the best way to train. And it absolutely isn't. And so when we created the group, it became a source of really accurate information. Besides from my success as a rider and my years of studying, training, I'm also a certified coach through the Peaks Coaching Group. I'm also certified for training with power meters. And then within the group, I also have people that are smarter than me, which is most everybody, that are experts in different fields of computers and training devices and aerodynamics and engineering. And so when somebody joins the group, they ask a question, they're going to get a real answer from people that know what they're talking about. Now, some of the people we have are people that would never race. There's people that wanted to join the group and they said, gosh darn it, I've been riding for a couple of years. I've had some physical issues, and I'd just like to go out and ride, but I just can't get up that hill that's near my house, and I just want to be able to ride up that hill. What can I do? Or so many times, David Studnick is a fantastic example of this. He says, I just want to be able to ride with the local group and not get left behind. And the same methodology that works for becoming the world's fastest rider works for getting up that hill or being able to get that group. And that is simply to be a better rider, you have to have a certain ability in one of three areas, that being fitness or endurance, aerobic capacity, or how hard you can breathe, and then your power, how hard you can pedal the bike. You put those three things together at any level. Why do you think that guy can't ride up that hill? Well, his legs aren't very strong and he can't breathe very hard, so he can't make it through the top of the hill without tiring out. And so the same techniques that somebody uses to set a world record are going to be done, but on a much easier level to help your average cyclist. And I hate to tell people, but it involves pedaling harder and working a little bit harder. But I've never seen anybody at any age or any situation that couldn't get better.
All right. So, I'd love to get into it more detail. We really are starting to run out of time here. So I think we're going to give your email address or something. We're going to post, as we always do, folks. We post links on after the show in the description of the video on YouTube, and we will have. Is that what we're going to do, Tom? Your email, I think. so people can ask questions. However Tom wants to do it, we'll put that up there so you guys can ask specific questions of him. I've got a couple of specific questions that maybe people are thinking of asking about. I wanted your opinion on, and let's see if we can get these pretty quickly because, like I say, we're running out of time. What do you think about center-placed cleats for the SPD shoes or whatever kind of biking shoes you have? We've heard a lot about people saying that for recumbent specifically, you place the cleats more towards the arch of the foot as opposed to more towards the top of the foot, like upright riders. What's your opinion on that?
Okay. Just the second thing anybody should ever do when they buy a recumbent bike is move the cleats all the way back as far as they'll go on their pedals. That's just, I mean, just physiology of the foot and the way the leverage works. It can do nothing but good things for, you know, your foot pain, your hot foot, and your power production. There's no downside to it, and if you do have trouble with your Achilles tendon or a severe hot foot problem, you need to find a pair of shoes you can modify to move the cleat farther back yet. This doesn't just apply for recumbent bikes either. A lot of endurance guys and time trialists that race conventional bikes, they move their cleats way back too. The old myth that you would actually flex your ankle deeply while you're pedaling a bike, and that was a proper thing to do, was pretty much a wives' tale that really doesn't really apply. So, yep, you want your cleats all the way back. If you've never thought about moving your cleats, but your feet hurt, that's what you want to do. Move that cleat back as far as you can move it.
All right. Good to hear that from you. Let's talk a little bit about ovalized chain rings or asymmetric rings. Are you a fan or not a fan? What do you think?
Okay, I've raced on both, and the jury's out. And when the jury's out for 10 years, it means they're probably not that effective. You know, Asymmetric sponsored Team Sky on the Tour de France one year, and they won the Tour de France. And then the next year they didn't sponsor them, and they won the Tour de France. So I set a couple world records using oval chain rings in 2012. I set another world record in 2013 on a round chain ring. They can change how the muscles in your legs are affected. I definitely think that they give your legs a little bit of a break in the pedal cycle when you're climbing. So if you've got knee problems or if you do a lot of climbing, I think that they're probably worth the investment. The very expensive and now getting to be somewhat rare rotor crank set that accelerates and decelerates the chain ring as you pedal really seems to be very effective for virtually that do a lot of climbing. So it's a very expensive option, but that stuff does work. But like I said, I've seen guys go to it, and the proof is in the pudding. When they stop using it and they don't go any slower, you have to think about how effective it really was.
Fair enough. All right, I've got more questions, but we are totally out of time here.
I thought we were 2 hours.
Go ahead, Tom. Were you saying something else?
I thought we were moving this to 2 hours.
We're trying to make it an hour and a half, and we may yet get to 2 hours. But you know, you are the endurance guy, so of course you're going to say 2 hours. The rest of us probably can't handle it. Let me just quickly. Bob McComb has chimed in on chat. Looking forward to meeting Tom and viewing his bikes in Cincinnati in October. So thank you for watching, Bob. And, you know, I think at this point we're going to wrap the interview part of the program up. So I'm going to thank Thom Ollinger for the wonderful explanations of his creations, of what he does in his shop, his racing techniques, his training techniques, all the wonderful information that you've been able to share with us today, Tom. I appreciate you going out of your way to spend time with the Laidback Bike Report and help us out with what you had to offer. So thanks for being with us today, Tom.
Well, thanks, Gary. It's been really fun. It's not quite as fun as when you were hanging out in my garage with me, but it's been really fun. And and you're going to put my email down if there's people that want to contact me about joining my training group. and really learning the truth behind becoming a better rider. It all starts with you emailing me. So I look forward to hearing from a lot more people. Thanks.
Absolutely, we will get that out there so people can email you with their questions. Okay, let's move along here. I think we've got all the questions answered at this point. So thank you all for sending all the questions, the great questions and comments that you sent in. Those are all important part of the show. So we appreciate that and hope you'll continue that on future shows. At this point, we're going to send it over to Denny for the Laidback Sports Report. Denny, you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
That's all you.
Okay. First up is Jay's Fat Ass 6 and 12-hour race, July 16th in Mahomet, Illinois. Two recumbents took the 12-hour challenge. Took on the 12-hour challenge. Terry Duffy with a respectable 210 miles, and Scott Radcliffe with 204.6 miles. In the 6-hour race, Jason Stoller had 47.6 miles. The last weekend Ram Challenge Series came to Minnesota with a 200-mile race and a 400-mile race Ram qualifier. There were several recumbents in the race, notably the 400-mile race. The dominant racer was the human-powered vehicle ridden by Paul Venturli, who rode 384-mile course in 19 hours and 51 minutes. Paul bested the next place rider by more than 45 minutes. Bruce Herman retired with 342 miles completed, and I think he actually finished the race, but he ran out of time. In the 200-mile race, Robert Volk was third overall and was just 7 minutes behind first and 1 minute behind second place with 12 hours and 58 minutes. Raymond Van Etten in a Velomobile finished in 15 hours and 29 minutes. Next weekend is the Mid-Atlantic 100, 12, and 24-hour race in Washington, North Carolina. This is a flat, fast course with mostly low-traffic rural country roads. It should attract a good field of recumbents. I'll be doing the timed 100 on an upright this year, and perhaps I'll see you there. Coming up, we'll try to get some coverage on the Battle Mount and some of the other stuff coming up this year. So the fall race season starts to heat up. Summers are a little bit slower, so we'll maybe have some more reports. That's it for this month. Remember to stay on the bike and keep moving forward. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Denny. One quick note here. James Duffy says, thanks for the cleats moving to the back of the shoe. I guess he was in agreement with Thom on that. James, thank you for tuning in. All right, at this point, we're going to go to the recumbent bike rider community on Google Plus and talk about the winners of our posts of the month, as we do every month. First of all, we have the picture of the month. This is by St. Eve. It's called My Recycled Recumbent, and you can see a picture of his great-looking recycled recumbent there with, I don't know if that's his cat or one that just happened to stray into the shot, but yeah, that's a great-looking shot there, and that became our picture of the month. Next, we have the video of the month by Bruce Johnson. It's called Morning Ride on My Linear, Linear. And this is an older Linear that he has kind of souped up a little bit. Nice looking, I think 360 as he went around the bike. Nice looking bike there. So Bruce, congratulations on that. The discussion of the month by one of our constant contributors, Franz Hein, who has his trike design project that's been going on for quite some time. This is he did a bunch of stamping, metal stamping for various things. I think this is for his seat, and this stamp is now finished. So he had a little discussion about what he did with that. Very interesting there. And as you guys know from last month, we have Phineas Pulcher, who always has amazing shots. So I had to give him his own category, otherwise no one else would win the picture of the month. So this is a picture of a number of pictures that he posted. The ride through Bavaria. He always takes interesting tours and keeps us apprised with great pictures that he shoots on that. So congratulations, of course, Phineas Pulcher on that one. So finishing up here, we've got I think we actually have 900 and 21 members on the group, so we thank you all for being part of the Google Plus community. We hope more of you will join that and enter the conversation with us. We have a community locator map, which I just updated. It has a lot more pins actually than this picture does. So if you are on the group and you haven't filled out the little form for where you are, please do that and we will add you to the map. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about next month. I alluded to it earlier. We are going to have Warren Beauchamp on. He is the owner of Recumbents.com. Among other things, he is a racing bent builder as well, also an integral part of bent racing at Battle Mountain. A very interesting guy. So we hope you'll join us next month. It's September 11th, actually, is the show. Also on the show, we're going to have Charles Coyne back on briefly to talk about Recumbent CycleCon, which we also talked about a little bit earlier. Recumbent CycleCon in Cincinnati, Ohio, October 7th through 9th this year. We will be there. Brian, Larry will be there. I think Denny's going to be along. We're trying to get Carl to come. Lots of manufacturers there. Lots of people show up. A great place to be if you want to see what's going on in the bent world and rub shoulders. So be there if you can. And in any case, watch and see what Charles tells us about what he expects to see when he comes on the show, September 11th. He'll tell us all about that. And Julie Keating from Amling Cycles in Chicago. They started a show called Cube, Chicagoland Unconventional Bike Expo. They started that last year. This will be their second year, as they tend to try to build up the show. September 30th through October 2nd, the week before CycleCon. If you're in that area, you might want to attend Cube. So Julie will be on for a few minutes also telling us about what they have planned for the Cube show. All right, so I wanted to thank each of the panelists that are with us today for their help in keeping this show going. And even though we glitched out there in the middle, everybody came back and stuck to their posts, so we appreciate that. Lars, put yourself on there. I wanted to thank you for your great work as always, switching around, keeping us going. Thanks a lot for joining us from what is becoming late night in Germany. So thanks, Lars. Always good to have you on.
You're welcome.
All right, and Larry Varney. Larry, you are muted, so don't try to say you're welcome or anything like that until you unmute yourself. But thank you.
I'm unmuted.
Thanks for being on, and we hope to see you again next month, and we appreciate all your contributions.
And definitely in October.
October. Oh, and I'm going to tell you more about the hats here in a minute. And Larry has offered to autograph any of your Laidback Bike Report hats. Right, Larry? So wouldn't you love to have one of these right there and just, have Larry Varney right there? That, I don't know what would be better to show off to your bent buddies than something like that. Unless, of course, it had Brian Ball on it. That, I don't know.
I was going to say, on eBay right now, my signature goes for a little bit more than his. So.
Is that true? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll let the viewers be a judge.
Because I wrote a book.
His signature is legible. That's the whole thing. It's legible.
All right, so folks, yes, we have the argument going. We'll let you decide, but thanks again, Larry. And if we can have a look at Denny, great sports report. Thanks for helping out with the questions today. A lot of work to do on the show today, so we appreciate, as always, you being here with us.
My pleasure. Always fun. I really look forward to it every month.
Well, we love to have you. And Carl, Carl Kidd is always working with the slides, the pictures. I do not know what I would do without him. He does a great job of getting all that done behind the scenes. His second 30 seconds of glory right here, ladies and gentlemen. That's Carl Kidd. Thank you so much, Carl.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thanks again, Thom, for a wonderful show and great information. And oh, by the way, I ride asymmetric rings and I love them, so therefore I think they're good.
There you go. You can't beat that. All right, and lastly, of course, Brian Ball. Brian, unmute yourself too, so when you talk, we can hear you. I wanted to thank Brian so much for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us and contribute today. Brian not only helps us, not only helped by coming on the show today, he's always a good supporter of the Laidback Bike Report. Helps us by posting the show viewer on the Bent Rider site. We really appreciate everything you do, Brian. Thanks for being here today.
Always happy to do whatever I can. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we're going to talk for the last little bit of the show about how, again, you can support us. And one of the things I've talked a little bit about earlier is the hat. So I'm going to make a big deal about these hats. So we've got them on the website, the Laidback Bike Report website. They're $20. If you come to CycleCon, we'll have them, and you can just buy them for $20. We'll add another $5 shipping and handling if you want to order them. You can just go right to the website and order them from there, and we would really appreciate that. Yeah, take a look at a couple of fine people that will wear a hat like this. You know, you can't beat this one. There's another one, I think, with all of us, yeah, from when we were at Spetsy. It wasn't looking too straight on my head. I think my head's crooked. And then I want to make the point that it fits almost anyone's head, so don't hesitate. It's fully adjustable. You can fit that hat on your head no matter how big the head. So so do that if you can. We'd appreciate it. Now, lastly, I want you to again have a chance to look at that little eye in the upper right-hand corner there for more information, where you'll see you can pop up our website, go there, see our past shows. We've got, I worked on the site this past month, added some bonus material, pictures, links to the chat that we have. So even though you don't watch it live, you'll see what people were saying during the show. So head to the website, laidbackbikereport.com, and please, if you can, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We've got a good ways to go. Click the little red subscribe button down there if you're watching on YouTube, or go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button there, or even on the website there's a subscribe button to YouTube, so we appreciate that. All right, so we talked about the past shows and the bonus material. Mailing list on the website as well. You can sign up for our mailing list and get information before anybody else does. I send out little emails, so you might want to do that as well. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and sticking with us throughout the show. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next webcast, ladies and gentlemen, from all of us at the Laidback Bike Report, so long.